A formal character analysis of Staff Sergeant William James, Jeremy Renner, in The Hurt Locker, Catherine Bigelow, 2008, by Emily Dale. Question. Using formal analysis of the nominated extract and referencing the film as a whole, analyze the character of Staff Sergeant William James, Jeremy Renner, in The Hurt Locker, Catherine Bigelow, 2008. You should consider all aspects of film form we have looked at this semester, as well as the concept of film style. The character of Staff Sergeant William James, Jeremy Renner, in The Hurt Locker, Catherine Bigelow, 2008, is a true representation of soldiers who become addicted to experiencing war. An analysis of Staff Sergeant William James in The Hurt Locker, 2008, conveys that the deployment of soldiers to high risk and high mortality situations causes them to become detached from fear of death and addicted to the adrenaline high from said situations. The Hurt Locker, 2008, is a film directed by Catherine Bigelow and based on a screenplay written by journalist Mark Bowell, who spent some time with the bomb disposal squad situated in Iraq and used the events he experienced as a basis for this fictional cinema piece. The film details a bomb disposal squad embedded in Iraq after the assignment of a new sergeant, one that has a maverick way of handling the job. Sergeant William James, the bomb disarmer of the squad, is used to illustrate the adverse effects that war has on soldiers and how they cope as a result, as well as conveying the addiction soldiers get from the adrenaline rush of high-risk situations, like disarming bombs. Sergeant William James's character accurately represents the nonchalance and disconnection that soldiers have towards dangerous situations as a result of overexposure to warfare and violence. The framing of this film can be seen in two parts: a representation of the nihilism and war and a heroic frame that offers a glimpse into the reality of war, David, 2011. A glimpse into the world of the soldier, how they experience close proximity to death, the constant anxiety and uncertainty of their surroundings, and the numbered days they have left in their command, David, 2011. Bigelow used the numbered days left in command as a parallel to the ticking of a bomb to create more suspense and stress in the viewer. The film has been framed this way to help the viewer understand the apparent anxiety and disconnection that soldiers face in war, and Bigelow has done this through the characterization of Sergeant William James. At first glance, it appears that Sergeant James is a depiction of the American hero. He leads the missions, is the person who defuses the bombs, and the one who continually puts himself in harm's way to protect everyone else. David, 2011. Yet as the film progresses, the spectator is shown another, more accurate depiction of Sergeant James's character, one that displays the reality of his heroism, a reckless and detached attitude towards death, and the result that, and I quote, an intimate acquaintance with it destroys much of its terror, end quote, Bird, 1917. This concept is continually illustrated throughout the film, but more specifically during the bomb disarming scenes. Sergeant James's indifferent attitude is conveyed when he jokes with a Jordanian sergeant about the location of a bomb or bombs and says, quote, "Why don't you walk over there, peek inside, and tell me what you see," end quote. His offhand, joking manner illustrates overconfidence due to his disconnection from danger and high-risk situations. Another example of Sergeant James's reckless attitude is illustrated when he kicks a car boot open with an explosive device in it. A long shot depicts him kicking the boot open with no apparent care for his own safety. The diegetic sound has been enhanced and every movement is louder and harsher to the ears. The lack of a non-diegetic soundtrack also adds extreme suspense to the situation. Multiple cuts from Sergeant James to his two teammates and back adds to the intensity of the situation and puts weight on his reckless behavior. Close-ups of the two teammates convey their stress and confusion towards this behavior. The disobeying of protocols by Sergeant James relates to most heroes in war films, as the heroic figure is exempt from rules that apply to others due to their exceptional prowess. Wexler, 2015. People become obsessed with war. They fall in love with risk and danger. They become addicted to it, and Sergeant William James in The Hurt Locker, 2008, is no different. This addiction, this love he has of war, is evidently illustrated throughout the film, and I quote, "War's dirty little secret is that some men love it. I'm trying to unpack why. End quote. Wexler 2015, page 1. Catherine Bigelow has used Sergeant James and the Hurt Locker 2008 to ponder this concept. When Sergeant James and his squad are called to disarm a bomb, they find themselves in a higher risk situation than normal. A mid close-up displays Sergeant James's hand dropping a crowbar in utter shock at the sight he beholds. It clatters to the floor loudly, the diegetic sound enhanced to illustrate the intensity of the discovery, followed by Sergeant James uttering an, quote, "Oh God," end quote. A close-up, shaky pan of the boot is used and continually used throughout the film to draw attention to the form of the film, as well as to keep the viewer on edge and stress throughout the film. Binns, 2013. The shot shows 7 or 8 bombs and cuts to Sergeant James, who starts to remove his bomb suit. A high-angle long shot is used when Sergeant James is removing his suit to illustrate his detachment from threat of a dangerous situation, as well as his infatuation and lack of fear with said threat. Sergeant James's character is evidently used to represent warfare as being sublime to soldiers who have been overexposed to it. Warfare, as defined by Wexler, 2015, page 3, is something that provides one with qualities of the sublime, sublime being a synonym for superb, beautiful, as well as a force to be feared. Wexler, 2015. Tension builds while Sergeant James searches for the bomb initiating system in the interior of the car. Diegetic sound is amplified, heavy breathing, knife-ripping fabric, shuffling movements of the sergeant. As this progresses, Sergeant James becomes obviously aggravated by the situation in the car, while tensions are rising outside the car. This is demonstrated through the unconventional cinematic approach of shooting Sergeant James from multiple different angles and cutting between him and other bomb squadrons. Binns, 2013. The contrasted aggravation of Sergeant James with his distressed squadrons is illustrated through disjointed cuts between the two. This adds to his stress and danger of the situation and works to unnerve the audience. The mise-en-scene in this scene, particularly that of the lighting, shows Sergeant James's shadowed face backlit by the sun coming through the dirty car window, enhancing the unreliability of his character, his reckless attitude, and his negligence to order. This ties into the concept of this addiction to war. He needs to find the ignition system. He has to find it, even though it's not necessary and putting everyone else at risk. Due to his love for the risk, he disobeys orders and puts his team in danger. This high-risk behavior is then commended by his superior, who states that Sergeant James is hot shit, quote, and a wild man, end quote, which confirms this reckless behavior as okay. As announced at the beginning of the film, start quote, "The rush of battle is a potent and lethal addiction, for war is a drug," end quote, Hedges 2002, page 3, which fades slowly, leaving the words "war is a drug" left behind. From the beginning of the film, The Hurt Locker, 2008, is such a clear representation of the attraction of war and the carnage that attraction causes. Sergeant William James is used to illustrate this strong message throughout the film. An analysis of his character conveys the severe impact that warfare has on soldiers and how they deal with it as a result, as well as the obvious truth that war is addictive. It is an enticing elixir that, as Hedges 2002 argues, that despite the destruction, danger, and terror of war, it gives people a purpose and a reason to wake up in the morning. Sergeant James was an apt representation of this throughout the film, which is finalized when he returns to Iraq to his love of war.